Hi guys, Pastor Tanner here, and just starting my interactive office hours and sermon prep for this upcoming Sunday, July 7th. Hope everyone is having a good holiday week, 4th of July, and just here doing my prep for this Sunday. So as always, please feel free to interact with me in chat. Got a new webcam, and I'm trying my sermon prep off of my desktop rather than my typical laptop setup. So we'll see how this goes. Also trying to stream in 4K. I don't know if that'll make a difference for anyone, but I'm trying that as well. So I'm always fiddling with this thing. Let me know if the sound isn't good or anything like that. And we'll go from there. Like I said, just working on my sermon for this Sunday, and I'd love to interact with any of you guys in chat if you'd like to do so. Just let me know. This Sunday, we're going to be finishing up chapter 4 out of the book of Mark, and it's the story of Jesus calming the storm. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, he took them along, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with them. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples welcomed and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and waves obey him." So we have a very interesting passage to wrap up Mark chapter 4. I want to do this passage justice. I'm also very excited because the beginning of Mark chapter 5 is the Gerasene demoniac. And I want to do at least one big sermon, but perhaps a series on spiritual warfare, because that's a very interesting passage there. But for this week, can't get ahead of myself, I got to work on Jesus calming the storm. And so that's what we'll be talking about this Sunday. As always, we're looking for a fallen condition focus first, and tying that into a formal proposition. This just involves reading the text a couple times and trying to discover what the intended meaning is. Fallen condition focus is the mutual human condition that we share with the original audience that caused the text to be written. It's essentially what the question you answer when you look at the text and you ask yourself, why did God put this in the Bible? That's the whole point with the fallen condition focus. What is wrong with us that we needed this scripture, that we needed this passage? So that's what the fallen condition focus is, and then come up from a formal proposition after that. So fallen condition focus. You can see one of the main things in verse 39 is that, verse 40 actually, is that Jesus is still frustrated that they still have no faith. I think this is going to be a prominent issue. So fallen condition focus still, well, we tend to lack faith even after many demonstrations of God's grace. That could be a fallen condition focus. They've seen Jesus do a lot of cool stuff, and yet they're still terrified. They still don't seem to understand, according to Jesus. I wonder if there's anything to 35 through 38. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him, a furious squall. Jesus was sleeping. The disciples woke him and said, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" So this "teacher, don't you care if we drown" might be an interesting one. So I'll just put some interesting points. Jesus is sleeping. That's interesting. Let us go over to the other side, leaving the crowd behind. Jesus leaves the crowd. That could be relevant because perhaps the fact that Jesus leaves them behind means that Jesus is not solely concerned with ministering to the same people repeatedly, but that he wants to spread the message, so that's relevant. So that's Jesus leaves the crowd. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. Disciples, don't you care if we drown? He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Wind and waves obey. And they don't seem to understand that. I think this is the main point. We tend to lack faith even after many demonstrations of God's grace. That's why Jesus is so upset. But of course there will be subpoints in there as well. So, because God is patient, He works with our feeble faith over time. See, I think this text is fairly straightforward. Like, I think it's going to be obvious. And people are going to realize, like, oh, he's going to talk about faith. They have no faith. What can we do, right? So because of that, it's going to tend to lack tension. So if I go deductive, I'm going to have to be very careful. I actually think it needs to be deductive. Let's look at tension. Preaching tension. I think the book will come with that. Right here, preaching to be heard. This book does a good job of talking about the different structures in the sermon. And deductive structure. Here we go. There we go. With the deductive pattern, tension cannot work in ways in the inductive. The problem and solution are stated together at the front. No waiting for a complement. Tension can still be developed. They continue to read because the idea has generated some question or questions in their mind that they're now eager to have answered. So if I go deductive, I'm going to essentially state up front something about our faith being small and feeble over time, and then I will have to develop that into a discussion that people are going to be interested in. I really think this is about the only thing that's super interesting in the whole passage. Do you still have no faith? That day when evening came, let's go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were other boats with him. Furious squall, waves broke forth, nearly swamped. Don't you care if we drown? This is also potentially interesting as well. Don't you care if we drown? Got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." The wind died down and was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" I think this is the key. But teacher, don't you care if we drown? Is an interesting idea. I like that one. These might be main points. Why are you so afraid? The funny thing is this passage doesn't offer up much hope for the one who is so afraid. Just kind of leaves them. Verse 41, they're terrified and they ask each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and waves obey him." But that's it. Just kind of leaves it out at that. When's the Transfiguration? Because this passage is eventually going to be related to the Transfiguration. See, it's not for a while. Man, Transfiguration chapter 9. I mean, we'll be a whole nother, I don't know, 6 months in by the time we get to chapter 9. The reason I'm wondering is because the Transfiguration is also an incident where, in Mark, we get to see Jesus for who he truly is. And you can see here the disciples don't get it. They don't see Jesus for who he truly is. And frankly, the text doesn't tell us that God is patient. He works with our feeble faith over time. So, I mean, I know that that's true, and I know I can get that from, say, the Transfiguration, but maybe I need to go a different direction with this one. I actually haven't done this yet. I am gonna open some of my study Bibles. Study Bibles are a really good way to get an overview of a text. So I've got a bunch of study Bibles up here, and I'm just going to go through each of them. This is the NET and the Gospel Transformation Study Bible. I'm not concerned with the NET notes right now, so let's, right here, they break out the pericope explicitly, except for they include verses 42 and 43. Oh, they go clear through chapter 5. Jesus continues to display his expanding range of power in every sphere of creation: power over the laws and forces of nature, power over spiritual demonic world, power over human illness and death. Not merely a political Messiah along the lines of a Davidic king, rather this Messiah is God, the eternal Son. Only God has the power to deliver and save from brokenness of our world and bondage. He's a great source of encouragement for followers of Jesus to remember who they serve, the triune creator of this universe. The power of the eternal Son protects and guides with utter reliability, even in great distress, since Jesus has paid the price for our sinful rebellion and has overcome the power of Satan and the grip of death. His followers are in good hands. Okay, so there's a bit of a reference here to the just sleeping in the boat. We're always in good hands. Okay, nothing super groundbreaking there. Let's try the ESV Study Bible and the NIV Zondervan Study Bible. Same thing, Jesus continues to demonstrate his authority. Some interesting facts about the Sea of Galilee. Asleep on the cushion. Lack of fear and great fatigue. True humanity. So lack of fear, great fatigue. Those are relevant. Jesus sleeping indicates lack of fear and great fatigue, a reminder of his true humanity. There are possible echoes of Jonah, however, Jonah is fleeing from God while Jesus is restoring the people of God. The disciples' fear of perishing is greater than their confidence in the presence of Jesus. Let's put that here under the disciples. The disciples' fear of perishing is greater than their confidence in the presence of Jesus. And that's really why Mark puts us in here, right? He wants us to see that we can't let our fear tends to affect every area of our lives, especially spiritually. So this might be a passage about fear. I think that would be good because I don't want to steal the thunder of the Transfiguration. This will preach really well on the Transfiguration. But we continue. Peace be still, divine power over nature, something God does. Jesus chides the disciples for being afraid. The antidote to fear is faith, trust in Jesus. So because we are plagued with fear, we must embrace the antidote, faith. Faith is the antidote to fear? Okay. It's not a bad idea. We'll continue. They are right in turning to Jesus, but they are exhorted regarding their fear and feeling forsaken by God. Verse 41, who then is this? The disciples ask the right question, for the calming of the storm gives evidence this man is also truly God. So that's ESV Study Bible. What does NIV Zondervan say? Again, same thing. Looks like everyone's trying to go clear through chapter 5, but again, I'm going to pause in chapter 5 and do a lesson on spiritual warfare, which I think will be good. One sec, I'm just going to check the stream and make sure everything's running smoothly. Going to get some quick feedback as I seek to log in and find it. Don't mind me. Don't mind me at all. My channel. Again, I'm live. How's the audio sound? And again, you're going to hear me. Don't mind me at all. I think it sounds pretty good. Okay, I'm going to close out my channel. Like I said, new setup today, so I just want to make sure that it's running well. And it seems good to me. Okay. So, once I get to chapter 5, I'm going to preach on spiritual warfare, and I might come back to this topic. 4:35 to 41, Jesus calms a storm in commanding the sea, and thereby doing what only God can do. Jesus reveals the true source of his authority and power. Leaving the crowd. Sea of Galilee is known for sudden furious squalls. It's a fun seagoing term. Sleeping on a cushion. This is the kind of detail one associates with the recollection of an eyewitness. It indicates the ordinariness of the movement of the moment. I'm going to put that down. Sleeping on a cushion. Eyewitness, question mark. Peter, question mark. Jesus sleeping indicates lack of fear and also great... Oh no, I already read that one. This one. In light of Jesus' subsequent command, it also testifies to his complete confidence in his power over creation. The most common form of address for Jesus in Mark is teacher. It indicates the teaching was central to Jesus' ministry. Its use here is specifically in connection with the calming of the storm, indicating why Jesus' teaching has authority. Verse 39, Israel's scriptures are emphatic that God alone controls the sea, which the prophets celebrated as sure evidence of God's power to redeem his people. Jesus used the same language to rebuke the wind, and later the Red Sea. From Jesus' perspective, his disciples had already seen enough to have faith in his power to protect them. Disciples had not even begun to grasp the full implications of Jesus' previous words and deeds, so this demonstration of his divine authority leaves them terrified. They know who alone calms the sea. Their fear testifies to the inability of the old cloth and the old wineskin to contain what's happening. Mark's readers are well prepared by Mark's prologue. Jesus is not just a powerful teacher. Again, fairly straightforward. Let's try the next one. This is the MacArthur Study Bible and the Reformation Heritage King James Study Bible. Both good. This account demonstrates Jesus' unlimited power over the world. escaping the big crowds. Wind, common occurrence on this lake. So exhausted from a full day of healing and preaching, even that storm could not wake him. So that could be great fatigue. How hard do we work for the kingdom? Again, these are just thoughts that come to mind as I'm reading. Be silent, be muzzled. Storms normally subside gradually, but when the Creator gave the order, the natural elements cease immediately. They become afraid. Reverence for the supernatural power Jesus had just displayed. The only thing more terrifying than having a storm outside the boat was having God in the boat. That's kind of funny. Arthur Study Bible. I like it. Same day, long and busy, he was weary, asleep. The fact that they appeal to Christ suggests a spark of faith amid the smoke of unbelief. But then they're criticized for not having faith. I guess it's degrees of faith, right? Jesus is Lord over nature, possessing in his mere word the power to control creation as its creator. Calms the storm. Indications of Godhead and creatorhood. If that's a thing, creatorhood. Don't know, but I'm going with it. Jesus is Lord over nature, possessing in his mere word the power to control. They feared exceedingly. After Jesus calmed the storm that had terrified them, the disciples next experienced an even greater fear with regard to Jesus, for only God can so rule the waves. Psalm 107. I keep getting these Old Testament references, so let's just do our cross references real quick. Get those out of the way. Matthew and Luke parallels. Not really interested in that. I did like the Job. Maybe I should take, though, ones that are quoted here in the passages, because... Oh, there's your Psalm 107, 23 to 29. Cried out to the Lord in their trouble. He brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm to a whisper. The waves of the sea were hushed. Ooh, that's interesting. Cross references. Boom. Where was that Job? There's that Job cross reference I liked. What's this picture of? Oh, mustard seeds. Nice. Job. Might have been in this one. No, it must have been here. Job 28, 25. Yeah, I don't like those ones as much. They're just not as clear. Might as well keep going. I like this. I didn't know that the Reformation Heritage had like questions or thoughts for devotion at the end of the chapters. Let's see if they have a good one for this last account. Right here. See, these are all the parables, but we do not read that the disciples consulted with Christ before the ship was in danger of sinking. Yet when they finally cried to him, they seemed to accuse the Lord of lack of care. Can you see yourself in this picture? Have you responded to similar trials? How should we respond in light of the fact that Jesus is Lord, who rules all things with his mere word? That's an interesting one. So, Reformation, Heritage, Study Bible. Boom. And this will be like an application. I'm going to highlight the beginning here in purple, because that'll eventually stick out to me for application. Two tendencies. First tendency is to, one, only turn to God in great times of distress or trouble. And the second tendency see, they didn't consult with him. So maybe it is only one tendency, but it's a combination. I'm going to change this. We don't want the numbers either. We ought to come to God long before it gets too bad. We ought to be constant with God. And those are both good. But they kind of do a right thing. They might have done it late. It's never too late to turn to God. Those are all decent applications. All right, let's go to another study Bible. This is the ESV Global Study Bible and the Faith Life Study Bible. More facts about the Sea of Galilee. Sleep on the cushion. Again, Peter eyewitness. It's funny you see stuff. Jesus sleeping indicates lack of fear and also great fatigue, a reminder that he's fully human as well as fully divine. We read almost that exact same thing in one of these other ones. Jesus sleeping indicates lack of fear and also great fatigue, a reminder of his true humanity. It's very similar, very close. Peace be still, displays divine power over nature. The cure for fear is faith in Jesus. It's going to be a nice little summary. Where was the antidote one? SV Global. And what's the Faith Life Study Bible say? Be quiet, be silent. Mirrors response to the unclean spirit. Demonstrates his divinity. Unique authority and power. Same thing. Again, nothing earth-shattering here. Let's see this one. ESV Systematic Study Bible, one I haven't used yet since I picked up. And then I also got the, what is this one? It used to be the Holman Christian Standard, but now they changed it. It's just Christian Standard, not Holman Christian Standard. Looks like the Theology Study Bible isn't demarked by verses. It's not versified. It's conceptual. It's interesting. That might be interesting to read it sometime. Looks like a systematic theology that has just been slimmed down. Yeah, I like that. That is interesting. On that day refers to the same day when Jesus delivered his teaching. Teaching all day. Help build suspense. Christian Standard Bible has got a lot of good information. The only time recorded in the Gospels Jesus is sleeping. Silence, be still, recalls the exorcism of 125 in which Jesus rebuked and silenced the demon. Jesus' rebuke of his disciples was not as harsh as in Matthew 8:26. See, and that's where I want to. That's why I want to go to the Transfiguration before I talk about his rebuke of them. Okay, very interesting. More of the same ideas, a little more detail in this one. Give me one second. I will be right back. I apologize for that. I have returned. Okay, so here's one of the challenges. We've got a relatively simplistic passage, and I want to get some good truths out of it. But that leaves room for opportunity as well. It's nice when we get a simplistic passage that a lot of people know and have seen, because that gives us opportunity to dig a little deeper. I think this is the heart. The cure for fear is faith in Jesus. I think that's the heart of everything that's going on. And so the fallen condition focus is going to have to do with fear, and faith in Jesus being the cure. So this is close. This is close to what we need. Because we're plagued with fear, we must embrace the antidote, faith. Because Fear is such a powerful motivator, we must let's see. Exercise God's given cure. But it's not the fact that it's a powerful motivator. That might be interesting insight as we get deeper into the text. Maybe because fear tends to... What is it about fear that's bad? Let's see. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side. Other boats, furious squall, nearly swamped. The disciples woke him and said to him, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Don't you care if we drown? He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, Quiet, be still. Then the wind died down and was completely calm. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Well, just abstractly speaking, fear, let's do a quick study on fear. And maybe we can lead to it. So let's do a fact book. Because you've got like perfect faith casts out fear, things like that. So let's try fear real quick. Unpleasant emotion caused by the awareness of danger. Let's see if there are any passages. Genesis 3:10, I heard you in the garden, so I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Some interesting passages. Let's see what my Bible dictionaries say. New Bible Dictionary is good. Fear. Let's pull that up. The Bible uses numerous words to denote fear. The most common of these: reverence, fear, terror. Theologically, 4 main categories can be suggested. Holy fear. It's probably like reverence. Slavish fear. Fear of men. Fear as the object of fear. It's probably the slavish fear, no? Strictly a natural consequence of sin. It can come as a punishment. Felt by Felix when he heard Paul preach. It is felt by Christ rejectors. Fearful expectation of judgment. Though not of itself good, this fear is often used by the Holy Spirit for the conversion of men. It's definitely not fear of men. They were afraid of dying. Maybe fear is the object of fear. God is called fear. Feared and worship. Their fear, the thing that terrifies them, comes upon the wicked. I think they mean God as the object of fear. Not fear as the object of fear. That looks like a typo to me. Is not your fear of God your confidence? Interesting. Okay, this is helpful. Not super helpful, but helpful somewhat. I will put I will put these 4 main categories of fear. Let's see, this is the New Bible Dictionary. New Bible Dictionary. Fear. 4 categories. Then I'll just put holy, slavish, men, and God. Slavish, men, God. And real quick, I'm just going to copy some of this passage so I can link back to it and use my copy citations, turn them on. So now when I copy this, it gives me the citation of this article, so I can come back and look at it if I want to. Good. I'm going to turn that copy citations off again. Okay, let's look at another Bible dictionary. These ones will be nice. I don't need Paul and his letters. I don't need later New Testament and its developments. I need Jesus in the Gospels, if it's in here. It's not. They don't have an entry for fear in the dictionary of Jesus in the Gospels. Let's try the biblical imagery one. This is just a good one. Look at this. Fear in the sense of terror is a formidable part of the Bible's picture of life in a fallen world. The Bible offers no psychology of fear. We can categorize the images of fear by the things that cause fear, physical results of fear, and biblical characters caught in moments of terror. So you got several aspects there. Can be traced to Adam and Eve after the fall. Genesis 3:10, that's a good cross-reference. Needed to add that. They hid because they were afraid. It is no exaggeration to say that after that terrifying moment in the garden, the human race has lived with the constant possibility and even threat of being afraid. See, this sermon might be a really good opportunity to go in depth into psychology. I could talk about types of fear, all this type of stuff. So you run across a passage like this that's very straightforward, and you almost think like, oh, what good is this? I want something a little deeper, right? But it instead gives you the opportunity to treat a common concept or doctrine in a deeper way, which can be just as helpful, if not more helpful, for people. So don't sell that short. Dictionary, biblical imagery. This dictionary is one we had to use for one of my classes, and I just fell in love with it. It's always got good stuff in it. Causes of fear. There is desirable reverential fear for God. The Bible also portrays God's actions as being causes of terror, especially but not only for those who do not trust in God. Burning bush. New Testament, Jesus tells people to fear him who has power to cast into hell. Fear falls on those who hear about God's judgment against Ananias and Sapphira. In the Gospels, people were afraid of Jesus because of his miracles. At the empty tomb, so here's one type of fear: God's actions. Fear for God's actions. The second one, threatening forces of nature. See, if you just get up there and say, it's not right to be afraid, trust in Jesus, you'll no longer be afraid. Well, biblically you are supposed to be afraid of certain things. And so this helps us to have a more nuanced perspective. Second cluster of images, threatening forces of nature. Terrify them with the hurricane. Natural disasters, earthquakes, and tidal waves. Job interprets his illness. The terrors of God have landed against him. Predators. Israel's wanderings in the wilderness. So, being afraid of the threatening forces of nature are throughout the Bible. And I think that's partially because the ancient world was a little more mysterious than it is to us now. We seem to think nowadays that we kind of know how things work, and we know the ins and outs of nature because of modern science and all that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But biblically, there's kind of this sense in which the world is mysterious and dangerous, and people need to be careful, right? Third cause of fear, death and calamity. Fourth cause of fear, actions of other people. Experience of warfare or fear of a rival nation. And then finally, eschatological imagery of the end times. These are all different aspects of fear. To sum up, biblical images of fear cluster around the character and works of God, the forces of nature, death and calamity, people and their actions, warfare, and the end of history. It is important to note that in regard to all these causes of fear, the Bible repeatedly holds out the possibility, sometimes phrased as a command, that those who trust in God are exempt from being afraid. That's a good one. And I'm going to turn back on my citations to copy this one. No wonder it's so good. Leland Reichen. Is he the editor or is he the... He's got to be just the editor, right? Yeah, he's an editor. Him and a bunch of other people edited it. Even this article, though, is super good. Who wrote this article? I want to see that now. Does it even say? I don't know that it says. References E.W. Conrad, but I don't know that he wrote it. Oh well. Physical results of fear. Again, this will also be helpful. Again, I'm going to turn off my citations. The human manifestations of fear include melting, trembling, paralysis, and fainting. Fear happens in the heart. Trembling of fearful is metaphorically compared to the pangs of a woman in labor. At the opposite end of the spectrum from the trembling are paralysis, immobility, and fainting. Biblical characters who fear. Finally, biblical images of fear include a gallery of characters caught in memorable moments of fear. Indeed, we encounter more than 200 occasions in which biblical characters said to fear or be afraid. This is just a good fact. Over 200 times somebody in the Bible is afraid. Just bold that real quick. Boom. Most memorable examples include Adam after the fall, Sarah with the divine visitor, Lot and his daughters, Jacob, Moses, burning bush, Aaron, Gideon, David destroying an altar to Baal, Samuel, David with Achish, Elijah, etc. Boom. The sailors when God punished in flight with a storm. The disciples when caught in a storm on the lake. And when Jesus walked on water. They have them all. Okay. Well, that was helpful. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is, yeah, we'll talk broadly about these ideas, but we're going to talk about this fear aspect. And I think I'll go into detail on when it's appropriate to fear, when it's not appropriate to fear, and try to drill down into that. Again, it seems to be that biblically, to sum up, it's important to know that in regard to all of these causes of fear, all of them, the Bible repeatedly holds out the possibility, sometimes a command, that those who entrust in God are exempt from being afraid. And I think that just leads to a natural why. Why don't we have to be afraid? Why? So, with so many types of fear, well, let's see. Why doesn't God want us to be afraid? Does God not? That might be part of it too. Fear. God doesn't want us to be afraid. Or God doesn't want us to be negatively affected by fear. See, this is emotional. This is action-oriented. Fear stops us from doing what we should be doing. Fear stops us from doing what we should. So this is just a demonstration generally of God's grace towards us. That He doesn't want us to emotionally and psychologically be afraid, but He also wants to stop us from being affected by inaction. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? So there are multiple reasons God doesn't want us to be afraid. So instead of, because fear tends to do this or that, instead we should just put broadly, because God's people. Well, let me do the second half. The second half is going to be easier. Yeah, it's going to be something to do. We must exercise faith to cast out fear. So because something is true, we must exercise faith to cast out fear. That's God's solution here. Now, what is true? Because fear, maybe it's both of these. Because fear is emotionally and physically detrimental. You must exercise faith to cast it out. Because fear is emotionally and physically detrimental. So in the passage we get the emotionally, right? They are terrified. And they're terrified afterwards too. But we don't know if they're physically. But that's when I can reference other passages where fear causes people to freeze, to tremble, to do all those bad things. Paralysis, immobility, fainting. Or because maybe it might be as simple as because God does not want us to fear. That might even be better. We must exercise faith to cast it out. This might be simple, and then I could go into why. Why doesn't God want us to fear? Well, here's why. It can be emotionally draining to you, and that could be detrimental. Or it could cause you to freeze, or it could cause you to take inaction. All of these things. Is it true that God does not want us to fear? That could be, why doesn't he? These could be main points or subpoints. Why doesn't he want us to fear? Emotionally draining. How did I type that? There we go. Physically harmful. At times it can be physically harmful. Why else wouldn't God want us to fear? Well, not only does God not want us to fear, but then here's another follow-up question. Is there a sense in which we should fear? So these are kind of going to be follow-ups. Because God does not want us to fear, we must exercise faith to cast it out. That's what the passage teaches us. But why wouldn't God want us to fear? Well, here's a couple reasons. And is there a sense in which we should fear? Well, yes, perhaps. So we might put reverence, for example. Reverence. Or even our safety. God might want us to fear for our safety. For safety reasons, right? If we're fearful because thieves and robbers or somebody might harm us or something like that, then that's good because it will cause us to take proper action. So we don't want to confuse all this. So maybe I'll put good versus bad fear. With a question mark. I'm trying to discover what that fear is like, good versus bad. Because God does not want us to fear, we must exercise faith to cast it out. So then, how is faith the cure for fear? And this might be things like eternal state. This might be things like future orientation. This might be things like God's purpose and will for my life. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere. All right, how long have I been going? We're about an hour in. I'm showing 59 minutes. So I think I'll wrap up here today. I know it's a little bit of a shorter one compared to some of the other ones I've been doing. We've done 1 hour. But I've already got a good fallen condition focus that I think is tied to the text. And I've already got some really good ideas for some main points and subpoints. This one's coming quickly because it's simple. But here's where it's not going to get simple, is when I'm trying to dig into the details of this information. That's where this is all going to get very interesting, and I can develop, I think, a better and more engaging sermon. So I'm going to stop there. I hope all of you guys are having a lovely week so far. It is Tuesday for me, the 2nd of July. Tomorrow's the 3rd, and of course Thursday is the 4th, which I know a lot of people have off. So I hope you're having a great week, maybe spending time with family, maybe spending some time outside in the wonderful weather. As always, please feel free to hit the like button on the video, to subscribe. Feel free to interact with me in the comments, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. I hope you are all having a wonderful week this far, and that will continue. Thank you so much. God bless. Take care. Bye now.